second and final day of the fourth Amazon Summit is underway in Belém, Brazil, with the participation of South American delegations and invited countries. At least 41 people have died in a new shipwreck off the Italian island of Lampedusa in the Mediterranean Sea. And at least 20 people have died and hundreds have been injured after an escalation of hostilities between Sudan's army and the paramilitary group Rapid Support Forces near to the capital. Hello from the headquarters of TeleSUR English in Havana, Cuba. This is From the South. I'm your anchor, Gladys Quesada, and these are the news. On Wednesday in Brazil, delegations participated in the fourth Amazon Summit arrived to take part in the second and final day of the event being held in Belém. According to the schedule of the Environmental Summit, leaders of the 8 countries that make up the Amazonian Cooperation Treaty with the leaders of nations that have rainforests in other regions to begin a process of building coordinated positions that will be taken to multilateral negotiations on environmental issues. On Tuesday, the Amazonian countries agreed in the so-called Belém Declaration to establish an alliance to combat deforestation among states and strengthen cooperation. Such a coalition seeks to promote regional cooperation in combating deforestation and prevent the Amazon from reaching the point of no return, recognizing and promoting the fulfillment of national goals, including zero deforestation. Brazilian Foreign Minister Mauro Vieira highlighted in his speech during the second day of the summit the importance of the participation of indigenous communities in the country's efforts to protect the Amazon.
The indigenous people represent about 5% of the population in the area, and they deserve a bigger participation to be included in this kind of summit and to be taken into account when taking decisions.
And the president of the Democratic Republic of the Congo, Felix Tshisekedi, warned that he needs to reduce the toxic gases that goes to the atmosphere.
Set different strategies of reduction of toxic gases. We need to stop the emission of toxic gases to the atmosphere, or at least reduce it. We need as well to establish alliances between the countries, which is paramount in the fight against climate change.
On Tuesday, in parallel to the meeting of the leaders of the Amazon Summit in Brazil, there was a mobilization of the peoples of the earth, who presented their demands to be included in the Belém Declaration. President Lula da Silva asked that the Amazon Summit be developed in 2 days, one of governmental with the leaders of the region, and the other with the Amazon dialogues where the communities can present their demands. Among the requests of the social movements and indigenous peoples are the protection of territories, confronting slave labor, food security and energy, and the economic transition towards a bio-social economy, strengthened by science and technology. They also seek a project of inclusion for indigenous peoples and support for traditional and black communities, as well as measures against environmental racism. On Tuesday in Argentina, members of indigenous communities changed themselves to the building of the Supreme Court of Justice and began a hunger strike to demand the repeal of the reform to the constitution of the province of Jujuy. The native communities, members of the so-called Tercer Malón de la Paz, have spent a week camping in the front of the Judicial Power Building located in the city of Buenos Aires. Faced with the refusal of the judges to receive them, 3 people changed themselves to the steps of the building and started a hunger strike, both of food and drink. The communities demand federal intervention in Jujuy and denounce that the reform imposed by the governor Gerardo Morales violates ancestral rights over lands that the state intends to use for lithium mining.
We have made this decision and we are going to stick to it. Let them kill us if they want to, or our dead bodies. They are gonna send us back to Jujuy. We will not return to Jujuy until the judge comes.
In this context, Nobel Peace Prize laureate Adolfo Pérez Esquivel denounced the abuses and indifference suffered by the indigenous communities of Jujuy.
It seems we are back in the dictatorship era, when indigenous people were persecuted for the sake of the business. They want a meeting with the Supreme Court, but the Supreme Court refuses to meet with community representatives. So we are mediating so that they can be heard. It is their right, otherwise this would be a democracy for some and not for all. We believe that lithium mining comes to finish the job of extermination of remaining indigenous communities in all of the Northwest region, because lithium ores will be the excuse to force our people out of their ancestral territories. Thus, the relationship of lithium with our native communities and the genocidal policy we indigenous communities are facing.
In Chile on Tuesday, the Senate approved another extension of the state of exception in the southern macrozone, which includes the Araucanía and Biobío regions. The extension, previously passed at the Chamber of Deputies, provides for the deployment of military and police forces in these regions with the alleged purpose of stopping violence. The region is involved in a historical conflict between the Chilean state and the Mapuche people ever since ancestral lands were taken away from the native communities and handed over to forestry and logging companies. Although Chilean President Gabriel Boric promised to end the state of exception, this is the 29th time such an extension has been granted. Now we move on to other topics. On Tuesday, the provincial candidates to the National Assembly of Ecuador begin the electoral campaign for the general elections on August 20th. The provincial candidates for deputies started their campaign activities after the situation with the legal appeals of their candidacies, before the electoral court was resolved. In this way, the campaign is formalized, which coincides with that of the presidential candidates, besides the national candidates. The National Electoral Council certified that there are no pending appeals and that the lists of provincial assembly members are firm. Let's take a short break, but remember you can join us on TikTok at TeleSUR English, where you will find the news in different formats, news updates and more. Other stories coming up, stay with us. Welcome back. On Tuesday, United States President Joe Biden announced his administration approved the training of Ukrainian pilots to fly F-16s and cleared for the way for a coalition of 11 Western countries to launch the training program. Defense Department spokesperson Sabrina Singh announced that the president has given the green light to allow and support the training to go ahead. The announcement paves the way for the coalition of 11 Western countries participating in the training program, led by the Netherlands and Denmark, to begin training Ukrainian pilots. On the other hand, it must be emphasized that about material supplies and training personnel, the Russian president has warned that Western weapons supplied to Kiev will only prolong the war and will not change its outcome. In the U.S., thousands of public workers in Los Angeles on Wednesday staged a 24-hour strike and a massive mobilization to demand better working conditions. Traffic officers, gardeners, mechanics, custodians, lifeguards, engineers, and civil servants, among others, staged the protest, which is considered the most important one in the last 50 years for the locality. The demonstration denounced and rejected unfair labor practices and the local government's unwillingness to negotiate. The strike comes in the midst of what California labor leaders have called a hot summer of labor, during which a wave of work stoppages has been fueled by the loss of value of wages in the face of the pace of inflation and rising costs of living in the city of Los Angeles. At least 41 people have died in a new shipwreck off the Italian island of Lampedusa in the Mediterranean Sea. 4 survivors rescued by the Italian Coast Guard explained to the authorities that the boat had left the Tunisian city of Sfax and that after about 6 hours of sailing the ship capsized due to a large wave and 41 migrants, including 3 children, fell into the sea. Last Saturday, 2 other shipwrecks off Lampedusa were reported in which 34 people died. The disembarkations continue on the Italian island, in whose reception center, with a capacity for 300 people, nearly 2,500 people were crowded 2 days ago. In France, 2 people are missing and 9 died in a fire at a vacation venue for people with disabilities. According to local authorities, the fire started at 6:30 a.m. local time at a private accommodation in Witzenberg. Another 17 people have had to be evacuated from the site, including 1 person who has been sent to a hospital in serious conditions. Emergency services deployed 76 firefighters, 4 trucks and 4 ambulances to contain the flames and attend to the victims. Christophe Moreau, the Secretary General of the local administration, said on news broadcasters France Info that the vacationers included adults with slight intellectual disabilities. The Haute-Rhine prefecture said in a statement that the group usually lives in the city of Nancy in eastern France, and the sinister venue was used for vacations. On Wednesday, at least 52 people were injured in a powerful explosion that occurred in the territory of the Zagorsk factory in the town of Sergeyev Posad near Moscow, local authorities said. Pyrotechnical products are manufactured at the Sergeyev Posad plant, and the explosion occurred in the assembly sector. According to preliminary information, the explosion was caused by non-compliance with the rules of the technological process. The blast wave caused glass breakage in factory buildings and residential venues nearby. The Russian Investigative Committee opened a criminal case for violation of the rules of industrial safety of hazardous production facilities, which led to a fire. No fatalities among the factory employees were reported. Now we move on to other topics. In the Primorye region, southeastern Russia, floods isolated at least 9 localities. Since early August, the local meteorological authorities have issued several warnings due to heavy rains in different areas. According to the Ministry of Emergency Situations, this could worsen with the passage of tropical cyclone Kanun, which, as according to forecasts, could bring torrential rains and strong winds on August 10th, 11th. Located in the southern corner of Russia, the Primorye region borders China, North Korea, and the Sea of Japan. According to the information provided by the institutions, the localities of Berezkova, Pokrovka, Sarovka, Meteorinchinje, East Malaysia, Limoniki, Dalnikud, Derzu, and Krasnoyakovna are the ones that are without communication access. Thousands of flights and ferry services were suspended in South Korea on Wednesday as Tropical Storm Kanun moves into the country's southern and eastern regions. According to the South Korea Weather Agency, heavy rain and winds have expected to hit the island of Jeju and then reach the mainland port of Tongyeon on Thursday. Forecasters said Tropical Storm Kanun could have a devastating impact as it is expected to lash the nation with winds of 90 to 154 kilometers per hour. The storm comes weeks after the central and southern regions of the country were battered by torrential rains that killed at least 41 people. And China is facing off the worst floods ever recorded in the country. On Wednesday, Chinese authorities reported that floods in Beijing last week alone killed 33 people and 18 others went missing. The Mengougu district is by far the most affected by the rains and the overflowing rivers. There, at least 300,000 residents have been affected and is reported almost 35,000 homes. Government agencies said that Beijing reported the heaviest rainfall over the last 140 years, for it got as much rain as it would get in a year. In the United States, the National Weather Service reported Tuesday that during severe thunderstorms, 2 tornadoes made landfall in parts of the state of Massachusetts. The first tornado touched down in Mattapoisett at 11:20 a.m. and was on the ground for 3 minutes. A second tornado, confirmed in Barnstable, started at 11:52 a.m. and lasted for about 4 minutes. The rainfall caused flooding of roads, stranded motorists, and disrupted public transportation. The heavy rainstorm left at least 2 people dead. TeleSUR launches its videos on demand site for you to go and revisit our interviews, top stories, special broadcastings, and more. Just go to the top left corner in our website homepage and click on the video option to access our VOD platform. And now we will have a short break. Stay with us. Welcome back. On Wednesday, at least 20 people died and hundreds have been injured after intensifying the combats between Sudan's army and the paramilitary group Rapid Support Forces in many cities near to the capital. According to the Khartoum spokesperson for the Sudanese Red Crescent, Mohamed Abu Bakr, 14 people died in the town of Durman alone, neighboring Khartoum, because of the constant bombardments between the parties to the conflict since April 15th. Also, 6 others were killed in Khartoum North, East Nile and South Khartoum by shells, missiles and air raids, Abu Bakr said. The military junta of Niger rejected the ECOWAS proposal to establish an advanced dialogue following threats of foreign intervention in the country. Military leaders assured that the request of the regional body is irritated after the sanctions imposed, which do not allow to receive this delegation in conditions of serenity and security. ECOWAS tried to send a delegation to Niamey City on Tuesday, prior to the meeting to be held by some countries of the bloc in Nigeria, where they will address the crisis facing Niger. The rebel military showed their unwillingness to engage in dialogue with the agency, as well as with the U.S. envoys seeking military intervention to put ousted President Mohamed Bazoum back in power. Kenya's government and the opposition began new talks on Thursday to resolve a political dispute following a series of violent protests over the high cost of living and demands for electoral reforms. The coalition, representing opposition leader Raila Odinga, said it wants to discuss the rising cost of living as well as electoral reforms after Odinga lost his 5th presidential bid to William Ruto, claiming he had been cheated. Ruto's opponent called off demonstrations in April and May after agreed to dialogue, but those talks broke down and the protesters took to the streets again. Kenyans hope that these dialogues can address the issue of the economic crisis, taxes, and increasing prices of basic commodities such as fuel and food. On the other hand, President Ruto declared that he will not entertain talk on a power-sharing agreement.
Peace, stability, and prosperity in whose name we gather here are not party issues. These are Kenyan issues. These are aspirations as the people of Kenya. These issues unite and never divide us.
Because we know that our country is more important than any one of us. And we've been sent here by the President of the Republic of Kenya, Dr. William Samoei Ruto, to come and sit with our brothers to find a solution to the issues that are being brought on the table.
On Wednesday, the Japanese city of Nagasaki commemorates the 78th anniversary of the atomic bombing perpetrated by the United States. The main activity was at the peace ceremony in memory of the victims of the atomic bomb. During the day, a wreath and a water offering were made remembering the dead victims and the people who suffered internal and external burns during the explosion and who were desperately asking the other survivors for water to quench their thirst. In addition, as usual, a minute of silence silence was held at the exact time the bomb exploded, 11:02 a.m. Also, a tribute was paid to the Hibabushkash, a term used for the survivors of the atomic bomb, the ravages of war, and the consequences of radiation.
By appealed to the leaders of the nuclear weapon states and countries under the nuclear umbrella. Now is the time to show courage and make the decisions to free yourself from dependence on nuclear deterrence, and I call on them to move steadily forward on the path toward the abolition of nuclear weapons through dialogue, non-confrontation, on the basis of a security concept centered on humanity.
And we have come to the end of this news brief. But remember, you can find this and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. And also, if you feel so inclined, please join us on social media for all the latest news. We are on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok. For TeleSUR English, I'm your anchor, Gladys Quesada. Thank you for watching.